Welcome back to Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Prowler only. Last time we took on variants. Some we fought before, but ones I actually wanted to fight by themselves because they were pretty interesting, to say the least. This time we'll be actually taking on some more interesting ones, and we fought one of them. However, the first one we're going to be taking on, we have not actually fought before, and this is called a Gore Magala. It's in the Ruined Pinnacle, and it is actually a chaotic Gore Magala. Go ahead and take the quest. Fire weapon is equipped, and I'll head on out. All right, making our way to Area 8. This is probably the worst area in the Ruined Pinnacle because it is a segmented area with ledges being the segments, which are not good, not fun, and this monster is going to show that off pretty well as to why it's not too fun because he's going to be moving around a lot. But this is pretty much a cross between a Shigaru Magala and a Gore Magala, as you can kind of see from the horn that's kind of growing out of his face and the little light scales that are on the right side of his body. It's going to be interesting. It's still called a Gore Magala, so it's mostly Gore with a bit of Shigaru. You'll notice some Shigaru attacks like the combo triple blasts that he will do, not like this one, but the ones where I'll lay up in front of him. One will go sideways and the other one will go forward. It's not particularly... It's weird. So the monster itself is not quite like an in-between. I'd say he's closer to Shigaru than he would be to just regular Gore. He's all over the place, and chaotic fits because he's very much, again, all over the place. Lots of projectiles are going to be going out. And of course, Frenzy's here, so we actually get some really nice affinity boosts whenever we do get that to go off. Dragon is only better on the face compared to Fire, where pretty much it's better everywhere else, which obviously you're going for the face mostly. However, if you are just kind of piercing through and hitting the body or the back or anything like that, then Fire's going to be doing slightly better damage, so you'd rather just work on that. Since we do have earplugs, we can ignore his roars, and he likes to roar a lot. He's also a monster with some fairly soft legs, so you can actually hit them and get a decent amount of topples to get your Mega Boomerangs off. I'm not really too much of a big fan of the fight, especially for melee. Ranged, it's fine. You can kind of take care of the stuff, but he kind of has all of the trappings of a not very fun melee monster. Again, he'll just kind of lurch forward sometimes and move around quite a bit, so you're going to have to constantly be chasing him. Tackles also are a thing where they're just instant sometimes. Sometimes they'll come after an attack and you can assume a combo, but other times they just kind of happen and you can't really predict them too much. He's also a monster where the backside of his hitbox is fairly large and the tackle will hit you if you are just on the backside. So if you're trying to chase him and he just randomly runs into a wall, you're probably going to get hit by it. It's not dealing maybe too much damage, but it is still pretty annoying and does throw off your rhythm a little bit. You'll notice his projectiles are actually pretty large, and sometimes he likes to just leave. Normally, if he leaves this quickly, he will just drop down into Area 5. He has a pin. He'll use his right arm, I believe, when he does the pin attack, and it would be his right wing arm, I believe. It's not a pin that can restore health, thankfully. In fact, it's just one of those ones where the monster picks you up and drags you around, and each step will deal a little damage. Not the worst thing in the world. You can pretty much easily wiggle out of it as long as you have enough HP, so not really anything to worry about. The right Shigaru wing has a bit more defense, and enough to the point where you'll probably hear bouncing sounds coming off of it. It's pretty tough. Like, you don't want to hit it. I don't know if Purple Sharpness doesn't bounce. I want to say maybe it does, but I don't have a Purple Sharpness fire weapon, so I've not been using it against him. Tail's also pretty decent. Again, it's just Gore with extra steps, which, again, is fine. And if you're listening to the theme, it is very much just a cross between Gore and Shigaru. That's pretty much what the monster is. Lore-wise, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. I think that when a normal Gore turns into Shigaru, it like screams really loudly or something like that, and that causes all of the other ones around that are trying to molt into Shigaru. I don't know if they're like a pack animal or anything. That would, I guess, make the most sense in that scenario. But I guess they're traumatized by it, or it just stresses them out enough to where they can't fully, completely transform into a Shigaru. So it's more like a first come, first serve basis. And the ones that don't get to transform are pretty much this. Get hit by that. I don't know if he was actually in base 4. Base 4 had regular Gore and Shigaru together. I want to say probably he was added in, and he's normally just kind of a G rank fight. He's a G rank fight here, and he is also a G rank fight in Sunbreak, but of course regular Gore and Shigaru are both G rank fights there, or master rank if you want to be technical about it. So not really seeing too much of him in low and high rank fights. Maybe, I don't think there is, but maybe there's a random quest in high rank village. However, I don't think there are many, if any, variant monsters in village quests. Certainly maybe gold and silver, but those are rare species, those aren't variants, so you really shouldn't find those too much in village, which is understandable. They're supposed to be special versions of the monsters. Get a pseudo hornbreak, maybe? I want to say his hornbreak has 2, and that might be just whenever he's powered up, because I do know that he has like the purple glowing horn and it's not here. It doesn't look too damaged, but it is a little chipped at the top. So maybe there are 2, or maybe I just got the one of attacking as a face enough. All right, it's going to tackle here. Again, that tackle just kind of comes out of nowhere sometimes, so it does get a little annoying. Be able to punish him with this here, because he just does the side roar. That's where those earplugs are coming in handy. And again, like I said before, he really likes to roar sometimes, so you might want to use earplugs for this fight, unless you want to keep dodging them. And that's not the end of the world. Especially if you're playing a melee cat, you may just would rather adapt them. They're fairly telegraphed, and you don't have to worry too much about them. The left wing arm's actually fairly decent. Obviously, you'll be piercing into it if you're trying to aim for the head sometimes. So it's not uncommon for both wing arms to be broken in most particular hunts that I've had with them. And it's going to be a little over 15 minutes, maybe into the 20-minute mark, depending on how much he moves. Ruined Pinnacle can be a bit rough depending on how the monster's patterns are and where they move from, because you can be just having to span multiple areas depending on if they can fly or not. All right. And maybe I just did get the horn break that early, but it kind of feels like that didn't really happen. Again, there could be 2. I don't remember. It's not like I didn't just fight this monster like 3 times in practice. Just completely forgot. But the horn break that I noticed usually came later, so maybe there's a second one. Get hit by that. That is not the pin attack. I think the pin attack that he does is that one. That's the one where he grabs the ground there. It'll just pick you up and then walk around with you. He's not going to do anything too threatening. The Rathian fireballs are pretty similar to actually dodge there as well. They are a bit large, and they will explode kind of close to his face when he does let them out. So again, if you are playing melee, you're going to have a bit more of a difficult time just because of that. There's another attack here that I haven't really noticed, which is, and I think that's the left wing arm being broken, or the right one. I don't see any damage on it, but go ahead and take this. And again, just seeing how soft his arms are, he's already toppled over, and we're not even 10 minutes into the hunt. So you're going to be getting a fairly decent amount of those, especially if you're in multiplayer, you'll see those as well. Since he's trying to run to the center of the arena, he's going to swoop up, and he moves very fast for a regular monster that doesn't have jet engines on its back. And like I said before, he has another attack I haven't quite seen yet, and I don't know if he has to be powered up like this for him to be able to use it. And I don't know the specifics of this mode either, because he doesn't have his wing arms out, but he does still have the horn. So I don't know if that's just the thing that happens at a certain HP threshold, and then once you break it, it just kind of goes away. Or if it's just kind of like an enrage mode or something like normal Gore. But he has kind of a frenzy landmine. You'll see it with Shigaru, you will not see it with regular Gore, as far as I remember, at the very least. And it's just kind of one of those that sit on the ground and eventually will just explode. I want to say it explodes when he roars, and it may just only appear when he roars, and it'll shoot out multiple little fireballs in different directions. I know they're like frenzy orbs or something like that, but I'm calling them fireballs because that's what they're closest to. They burst here. Really probably need to be using more mega boomerangs. It's a fairly actually easy fight to get mega boomerangs off on, especially when he does stuff like this. Again, it's very similar to the Rathian triple fireball. You just have a lot of downtime to be able to get stuff off there. There's the left wing break. I do not know what the other one was. I'm not going to complain though. And it may have been the right wing arm. I just can't tell that easily. I'm very surprised that that would have broken so quickly too though. Maybe could have gotten a mega boomerang out there, but I think this is fine as well. Throw a couple of uncharged ones. Try to move out of the way. I will say about the landmine attack, though, it is a bit annoying because a lot of times it happens off screen and you won't see it, so you may just be completely blindsided by it. It's much more noticeable, and especially in 4 Ultimate with G-Rank Shigaru, because he just kind of puts those things all over the place and you might just get swatted. But I do believe it, even in Generations Ultimate, he still kind of has the gimmick of placing those all over the arena. It's just that he's not as fast in GU. 4 was, at the very least in my observations, a lot more involved in making the monsters faster, but less health-based, like they were in 3 Ultimate. And even in this game, they're not the most. I feel like this is kind of the perfect middle ground of both 4 Ultimate and 3U, though I know some people who like the 4 Ultimate ones. I don't really know of anyone who really favor the 3 Ultimate health pools, because at the very least for me, when I played through the game, and I played through it twice solo, it gets to be a slog compared to this game. And even 4, like 4, you may die, you may fail a couple of quests, but the monsters are going down fairly quickly, especially if you're, you know, playing the game immediately after 3 Ultimate. You'll be noticing it. And yes, underwater is also in 3 Ultimate, which does slow down the pace a lot. There's one similar landmine. That's not the one I'm talking about, but it does something similar. The one I'm talking about will be like a little light pillar in the ground that will just kind of shoot it out in multiple different directions. That one kind of did it there, but it can do it in every direction, I believe. I think this is safe. I was hoping he would maybe combo a little more, but looks like he's just going after a palico. That may not hit. It's hitting a wing arm. That works perfectly, actually. Gives us another down for an actual good one. I'm going to go ahead and be greedy and throw this one out as well. These are taking a good chunk of health off every single time, so it never hurts to get more of those out, especially in safe scenarios. Little aerial tackle like Rathalos and regular Gore, obviously. Again, most of his moves are just from regular Gore, so if you're used to that fight, you just want to keep an eye out for the Shigaru enhancements. And there are some unique things I believe you can do as well, but for the most part, you're just going to notice the stuff that's similar to Gore and Shigaru. All right, a couple more here. He's going to roar. I don't know if I want to try and set it. Okay, we're going to do this. I might just get swatted out of it, but we'll see. Nope. He played that very much incorrectly there. That attack does extend a little bit further forward. If you've fought the tempered version in Wilds, you'll kind of know what that means. The ground that quakes up is also the hitbox as well, which obviously. But it's not going to be like a Cantor. I think it's a little bit more generous where it won't hit you if you're not hit by that. But you know how a Cantor was when he dug out of the ground and hit me, even though I wasn't really in that hitbox. All right, a couple of swipes here. I'll go ahead and throw one out and try to spin off. All right, he launches that there. I'm going to do a lunge into a spin. Probably not the worst monster to get a mount on, honestly. Again, he's a little squirrely, so he's going to be all over the place. If you're not using range, then yeah, it probably would very much be helpful to actually get that mount off, especially when you have your damage dealing skills ready to use and you just don't have that much of an opening. And yeah, he just goes up very high very quickly. While he's exhausted here, I do know of another attack that he's prone to doing. So when he goes up into the air, he can combo an attack that kind of goes off to the side. And while it looks like he just missed you, he won't. That's actually the setup for a swipe with his tail and just the rest of his body as well. But the tail's really the one that extends the furthest. So don't just, you know, look at him flying past you and be like, oh, well, you missed, buddy. Because he's actually setting up for something different. Try to reach here. And I will say this, the fight's actually being a bit easier since I've practiced it. Again, normally when you practice a fight, it will be significantly easier than normal. And you'll maybe be a bit more fonder of the fight. But you may also have some fights that are just kind of, and this isn't one of them. I think it's fairly fine, especially with ranged. When you are playing melee, again, there are some annoyances that I have with it, but for ranged, it's kind of nullified because you're just ignoring everything he does up close. But there are certain monsters that are just kind of annoying, even if you know what they're going to pull out, because they can kind of just pull it out of nowhere, especially after an attack that you would think would be a cooldown, or that normally is a cooldown, and they just decide to pull out a strong damaging move that could one-shot you. Not particularly only in this game. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I do really dislike Silverwind, but Silverwind's again more of a case where the monster just likes to run away and it doesn't like to fight you, and it just tries to zone you with projectiles. But Shigaru, or sorry, not Shigaru, Chaotic Gore really isn't like that. He'll try to close some distance. It's just sometimes he has weird quirks in his AI that makes him like lurch forward. Like, look, he's looking off at a wall there and running. Like, that's not good. If you're behind him, you're getting hit by that backwards hitbox. So it can be frustrating, but it's not really, I think, a problem with his moveset. I think it's just maybe a weird issue with his AI. Get another break somewhere. Not quite sure what that was from, but it was the sub quest. I guess I could check and see if it was... Okay, it's not going to tell me. That may have been the secondary horn break, which would make sense. I'm going to actually try to throw this out. Unfortunately, inputs were not chosen there, so I just ended up guarding and doing nothing. We will be whacked by that. That's okay. All right, maybe this will finish it off. He was limping away. I'm not sure, though. Hopefully it does. Okay, there we go. Again, takes some getting used to, but if you're playing ranged, you really won't have much issues with it. As long as you just stay away from a lot of those close range fireballs and stuff, they shouldn't be that much of an issue, especially considering the fact you're getting just extra affinity as you're fighting it, because those little frenzy AoE fields are just going to be hitting you constantly. So that's just going to be upping your damage in the long run. I will say this, he has similar health. I want to say maybe like 500 less or something like that than Savage Devil Joe. So this would be about what the time it would take to fight the Savage if it wasn't just constantly restoring health, which was about 20 minutes. This was a slower run as per usual. These are going to be a bit slower because I'm not focusing as much on attacking and more on surviving. Either way, carved him up. I'll meet you back at base. And yes, I'm going to ignore the tail because we do not need it. All right, back to the hub. As per usual, we don't get variant equipment, so we don't get to look at that. But I will say this, if you, I believe, break the horn, it's a horn icon or claw icon, so it may also be the claw, but you will actually get a Shigaru part, which would be the Shigaru Purifier. I don't think I have it in my item pouch, and I may have spoiled the monster we're going after next, but it should be in here. It's like a Shigaru Magala Purifier or something like that. A Shigaru Magala Claw, that's what it is. I thought it was the horn, but I guess you maybe can't get the horn from it, which would make sense. It may actually be the diametrical horn. That's the special one for Chaotic Gore. But I do find it interesting that obviously it has some Shigaru parts on it, right, as you're fighting it. So it's kind of neat getting different monster materials from a monster that's not necessarily named that. Either way, go ahead and switch to our ice weapon real quick. And now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and head off to our favorite map, Ingle Isle. The wonderfully fun and dreary red place to fight a Brachydios. In fact, slay a Brachydios, because you cannot capture raging Brachydios. Go ahead and take the quest. Once again, we have our ice weapon equipped because it's actually better here. We'll head on out. All right, so we fought raging before. Don't remember quite what quest it was. Certainly was one that took place on Ingle Isle, because I do not think you can fight raging anywhere else. Interesting hit zone philosophy, I guess, here. Cutting is better on the face, but it does not have the pounders as a weak spot. So it would be a 45 here for our blunt weapon, but I want to say it's like maybe only 40 or 30 for the cutting weapon. So you do gain that. However, of course, cutting's slightly better on the tail at a 40 hit zone because, you know, you can cut it off, but that's not really something we're too worried about. Now, as I said before, he has these little glowing parts sometimes on his body. This is what kind of sets him apart from regular Brachydios, where when regular Brachydios goes enraged, he will actually just explode on impact with his punches and stuff like that. However, raging's a bit different. When he has the red glowing stuff, it will act pretty normally compared to raging, or yeah, I guess raging regular Brachydios. However, if you break them off, it makes him so he's not able to do that. I think that's going to be your main goal here, and I'm trying to hit them. However, boomerang speeds are pretty slow, so they're not always going to be the most accurate at hitting the ones you want, especially after you've already broken one and you're trying to aim for another one and it just keeps piercing through the one. I'll say this as well, in my practice with this fight, which only actually did once. Sometimes the hitbox on the explosion is not tied to its visual. So you want to give a little bit of leeway there with how your positioning is going. We can dodge into them, though I prefer to actually position out of the way of it. But if you're like in the middle of his little long line explosion that he does when he's enraged, or just those little punches that he did there, you're just going to want to stay away. This is certainly a fight where it is pretty easy to actually card on if you're not playing carefully and actually giving him time to do stuff. And he has similar health to Chaotic Gore, around 14,000. I think that's the max. It can actually be 13,000. This is one of the few variants, if not the only one, that can actually have fluctuating health, which I find kind of interesting. But it's going to take maybe a bit longer. I want to say it took me 19 minutes, so actually, maybe we'll just take less time than the Gore, depending on how aggressive I want to be. You may not be able to get a bunch of Mega Boomerangs off here. You're going to have to get a feel for the fight before you actually feel safe actually doing that. In fact, right now, I'm going to go ahead and just Soothing Roll. This would be one of those chances where if you position correctly around that little exploding formation, you should be able to get a pretty easy Mega Boomerang off there, but you may also just get whacked out of it if you're not in the right spot. I don't think they're random. I don't remember them being random, so don't worry too much about that, but you could also just look at it a couple of times and see if it is random. I don't think it is, though. Normally isn't with the regular Brachy. It's just kind of in a star formation, but that one has a bit more around him, closer to him. From what I remember, of course. Keep going for these pounders here. And of course, you can break the pounders. They have a lot of health. They will not break very quickly, so you're probably going to be attacking them for most of the hunt, which is kind of what the fight is designed around. It's how normal Brachydios is designed as well. And of course, you can go for the head. As per usual, aim for the chin and the face and not the horn. That still adds to horn damage to break the horn. However, the horn is a hard spot you do not want to actually hit. At least I think so. Again, I could be misremembering this, but I want to say I've bounced off the horn before with melee weapons, but I could just be thinking of the hard sounds that the weapons are making here and thinking that it's hard for some reason. I don't know, you know I'm weird like that. You may get one KO here, especially since you're attacking a lot closer to the face. I want to say if you do hit the horn, that may also count for KO damage, so you're not losing out on everything. However, you still want to just make sure you're aiming for the face. Similar to Diablos, actually, in that aspect. I want to say it's actually a weak spot in World once you break the horns. That's not the case here, so you're still really not going for the face unless it's right in front of you and that's the only place you can hit. But in World, if you attacked and under the horns, you would still deal damage to it. It would still add to horn damage, and you would not bounce off of it and, you know, suffer that penalty. Think of double sharpness loss, which isn't good. Do a little stomping tantrum here. He's getting off, of course, as per usual. The monsters that can leave into the lava will be annoying with that. In fact, it's going to be most monsters here because generally they're either fire monsters or just very strong monsters in general that don't really care about lava for whatever reason, which is kind of funny considering the fact that I want to say you fight some monsters here that have a fire weakness. Not sure how that works, but you know, it's Monster Hunter. You don't really question it too much. I guess Elatrian would be one whenever he's in his ice form. However, that's normally when he's in the air, so I guess he can't really touch the lava if he's in the air. I do think he lands sometimes, but I'm just rambling at this point. He will apply slimes at some points. I don't think when he gets exhausted, he can run out of it. Could be wrong on that. Again, I only did one test run, and I wasn't really paying too much attention to him. But I think that's the case, because I never really see him ran out. The only thing you can really do to weaken him is break them, which is, of course, just going to be great in general. And then, of course, get that flashpoint slime off of his arms and his tail. The tail can be particularly annoying, because especially if you hit it and he's like punching you or something, so you try to dodge, you don't get the dodge off, the tail can just explode in your face. And I've had times where the flashpoint slime has refreshed mid-attack, and I've been hit with flashpoint explosions because I can't break it off in time because it refreshed as soon as I was trying to dodge it. And I think the one case that it was particularly notable was because I carted to it, like an actual cart, because he was aiming for my Palico. There was no flashpoint slime on it, so I'm like, okay, I'm off to the side here. I can attack him safely. The punch came around, didn't hit me, but the following explosion did and carted me, which they can deal some decent damage, especially if you have Blast Blight on, but I didn't there. And for the most part, you shouldn't be, especially with Soothing Roll. This will hit me. get some Blast Blight. You will have to dodge 6 times as a Prowler if you want to get that off of you. And of course, your cats will be mostly debilitated if they do have Blast Blight on them as well, unless you have, I want to say, Biology, that skill on your Palico, and maybe a different one. Maybe like Negate Confusion or something. Kind of a weird extra little bonus, but it is nice nonetheless to not have them flailing around like crazy. Surprised that actually didn't apply Blast Blight to him, but obviously that's good. We don't want that to happen. He's exhausted here, so I'm going to waste that Ghost Bite Wind to actually get some damage off here, and Palico heals us, which is great. You can see the explosion actually hitting us there. And I will say this, though he is more difficult, I would at the very least consider, than Chaotic Gore, the other monster we fought. I want to say this is a more fun fight. Not really much changes, honestly, throughout the entire fight. It's just kind of the same all the way throughout, but it's fun. It's kind of like a dance. Not really something like Mizutsune where he's kind of all over the place. There are some weird things. The usual Brachydios tail slap is here, of course. Whenever he punches you, you dodge that and he slaps you with his tail. And that one is a bit more lethal because it does actually apply Blast Blight. But that's not really the end of the world. And it just does add a bit more of an interesting interaction there that you wouldn't have otherwise, which I find fun. And again, I've fought this guy quite a few times in the past. Funnily enough, I was using the Amatsu weapon because for some reason I thought he was weaker to water. I think I just kind of assumed that. I want to say regular Brachydios is weaker to water. There was some weird shenanigans in World where they kind of like changed Brachydios' resistances. So in one game he's weaker to ice, while in the other game he's weaker to water. I don't remember how that exactly goes, and I want to say the resistances swap for raging specifically compared to regular, but again, I'm just going off of my head from that, so I could be just wrong in whatever particular sense. There's the horn being broken. Again, we're not really attacking the face that much, but it is just kind of getting residual damage by the random piercing bits that we don't actually hit. I think this is safe. I hope this is safe. I'm pretty sure it's safe. The most risky thing about Mega Boomerangs is the fact that he does sometimes just like take a circuit lap around you like that. He'll do it for a lot longer sometimes, and that will just kind of negate your Mega Boomerang entirely. So depending on how close you are to the end of his cooldown animation, you may not want to actually throw one out because you may just end up wasting it and, you know, being worse off than you were if you didn't use it. As per usual, if an explosion occurs, like with regular Brachydios, there will sometimes be a shiny drop, and you can get a chance at, I think, just Flashpoint Slime with regular Raging Cure. But I think regular Brachydios is just Mysterious Slime, which is useful for, I believe, some parts. I don't remember or recall any particular weapons being meta that were Brachydios, or even Raging Brachydios. I want to say Raging is just at the end of the Brachydios tree. I think they're probably just okay middle of the road blast weapons with white sharpness and lower raw. However, again, I'm thinking of World here, so maybe not. I know they were like a side grade to Safi Jiva in World, but this is not World. We're not playing World, so completely different meta, completely different game. And none of that applies here whatsoever. There's the KO. All right, we'll try to hover this in a very nice sweet spot here. Obviously, want to hit the face first. That's more important because it's obviously taking more damage. I want to say it's 65 for cutting and 60 for blunt, which is, again, not the best because our blunt Mega Boomerangs also have that 10% reduction compared to regular. So yes, you're going to be dealing less if you're just only hitting the face. However, I do think, and the reason I'm, you know, preferring this over the Kushala weapon is just because those pounders are very large, so they're pretty easy to hit. And since they're all kind of clustered together, you're not having to worry about losing out on as much damage compared to a cutting weapon and just neutral play without Mega Boomerangs involved. There's a pounder break, getting lots of breaks as soon as I quit talking, which I guess works. A little line of fire. Sometimes he'll do it twice, sometimes he only does it once. Really just depends on if he's enraged or not, and depending on if he, I believe, combos a different attack before it. But it's a very telegraphed attack. You'll know when it's coming. So realistically, the only time you're probably getting hit by it is if you're stuck in a very long animation commitment. And there we go. Probably about similar. Yeah, 19 minutes, not terrible. Didn't break the other pounder surprisingly, which normally in my test hunts, obviously not these, but just the for fun hunts, both of them will get broken, but surprisingly not this time. Other way, carve them up and meet you back at base. All right, back to hub. I actually got like a pallium and an immortal reactor, which are just the like rare rubies of G rank. There's a brachydios and the immortal reactor. Unfortunately, those do absolutely nothing in this scenario, and no purpose in selling it because max is any, because we're not making armor and upgrading armor. I do wish there was maybe a way to, you know, upgrade Prowler equipment a bit more, or just something like feline decorations to slot in armor. However, this was their first game with it, and so far the only game with it, so whether or not we ever see that again. I do believe they actually had feline decorations in Frontier, which I would like to see, especially since they're incorporating some Frontier elements into the main series now. But yeah, nothing for us, unfortunately. Either way, hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a comment below, and maybe even consider subscribing. Till next time.